Hey guys, how you doing? Welcome to the new era of Plots and Points. We're going to call this the YouTube Live era because I don't have any access to editing software anymore. I've gone from having my own room with a massive computer in it to having a bigger room with a tiny thing, like a little laptop thing that's not powerful enough to even run Windows Movie Maker. So we're going to go unscripted and unedited. It's going to be brilliant. Or shit, I don't know, it's all live. So today we're going to be talking about a writing technique, a very specific writing technique, which I think George R.R. Martin has used to an absolutely astounding effect in his magnum opus series, A Song of Ice and Fire. And that technique is using the Fatal Flaw. Now, you might be wondering what that means. Anyone basically should know what it means. The Fatal Flaw is a concept in sort of character development where it's all live, guys. It's all live. So the Fatal Flaw is a concept in character development where a character that is otherwise more or less ideal or perfect, made perfect a strong word, but like ideal, has got a lot of good traits about them, has one thing about them that undermines it all. The most famous example ever used probably is Hamlet by William Shakespeare. If you're familiar with that story, like Hamlet is a strong guy, he's the Prince of Denmark, he's charismatic, he's attractive, everyone loves him, all of that stuff. The downside to Hamlet, though, as a character, is that he is not good at making decisions. He suffers from what is known as analysis paralysis. He often finds himself with the ability to make a decision that would advance his goals to a way that would be desirable, but he doesn't make that choice until it's too late. The opportunity passes him by. That is what is called a fatal flaw, because it undermines his whole character, and his whole character arc basically is sort of brought down by that, and in fact it's sort of driven by that. It's like Hamlet's the events that happen to Hamlet as a character are driven by this flaw of his. That's the concept of a fatal flaw. Most of the time, what writers will do is they'll create a fatal flaw with their character, but they will use it as an obstacle for that character to overcome. I'm trying to think of like a character like, let's say, like Neville Longbottom, right? For the obvious Harry Potter example, booktube, people are going to be familiar with it, right? So Neville Longbottom in Harry Potter is a coward. He's a big scaredy pants. Especially in the first book, like this is brought up. Like Neville is a bad wizard because he is a coward. He's got a lot of other good things going for him. He's relatively bright. He's studious. Good wizarding heritage and all that. But he's a coward. He's not brave. Even though he does end up in Gryffindor, and that pays off later on for Neville when he overcomes that flaw and stands up to Harry and Ron and Hermione, and he gets the 5 points for Gryffindor, whatever. But that's an example of a character having a flaw written into him, only to be overcome as a form of character development. Now, what George Martin does, which is the reason why all of the deaths and shocking moments in The Song of Ice and Fire and The Game of Thrones, it's why they all are satisfying. What he has done is he's put a fatal flaw into each of his characters and then had the guts to follow through with that flaw, and not allowed the hero to overcome them. This goes back right to the very first book, where obviously this is all spoilers for Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire and all that, so if you don't want those, stop watching. But what he does is, like, right from book one with Ned Stark being killed, is he develops that character flaw. Like, Ned is quintessential hero material. In any other fantasy book, he would be the character that goes through the whole series, and we'd follow him. He'd grow as a character, and then he has this flaw, right, that he's too honourable for the Game of Thrones. That's a positive trait by all means from our point of view, but in this world that's a big weakness, and that weakness is exploited by the other characters, and it leads to his death. And that shocked people when it happened. It shocked people when it happened in the books, and it shocked people when it happened on TV, because he's the hero, right? We've been trained by all these other books and these other stories to expect the character to overcome their weakness, find a way to succeed despite it, right? But what George Martin does is he weaves that weakness in and then follows through and has it be a fatal flaw. This goes on with a load of other characters in A Game of Thrones. We've got Viserys, is Daenerys' brother from the first book and the first season. He is, by all rights, I mean, he's supposed to be like this attractive guy. He's got a heritage. He's got a Dothraki horde. He's got, you know, the blood of kings and all that stuff. He's got a lot going for him, but then he's got this temper on him and this ignorance of other people's cultures, which makes him do stupid things. And he pays the price for it. It gets him killed. And then later on in the show, we've got Oberyn Martell. This is probably like the biggest other example, right? He fights the Mountain because he wants to revenge for his sister, and he almost wins. Like, he's on the precipice of victory in that fight, but he can't get it out of his head that he wants to make the Mountain confess. It's this obsession with getting that confession out of him that lets the Mountain have the window to turn the tables and win the day. So it's like that one flaw of Oberyn's character leads to his downfall, which is why if you go to any character that dies in that whole series and you trace it back with that fatal flaw in mind, like look at what the reason why they died and then trace it back, and you can see the seeds have been planted right from the start that this is a big weakness for them. And then I think you can use that to sort of predict things going forward, and it adds this layer of depth to the characters where we are allowed to believe they are real people because their real weaknesses lead to realistic consequences of those weaknesses. And that's something that so few authors have the guts to actually do. And it's why it's so effective in that series. So what can we learn from George Martin and from A Song of Ice and Fire, and this idea of allowing the fatal flaw to define a character's entire fate in the end? I think the big thing to take away from it is that in storytelling, to create a more rich narrative for your characters, you need to have their flaws be meaningful, and you need to let them impact the story, rather than just being another obstacle for them to overcome on the way to a final end point. Like, for example, let's go do another booktube favorite example. Like in The Mortal Instruments, right? Jace has a character flaw that he's arrogant, but at least in the first book and in the second book of what I read of it, like, doesn't really hinder him at all. Like, he never rushes into a fight headlong that he can't win and then pays a price for it. He always comes out on top because he wins despite his arrogance, you know? And that's fine, it's a way to do it, but it's just very bland and it's very predictable at this point. And what you can take away from The Song of Ice and Fire is that it's okay to allow your character's weaknesses to reach their end point. That's basically all I've got to say. Like I say, this is all live, so it's not scripted out or anything. I'm not able to edit out any awkwardness. So, I mean, this is really, I guess it's just sort of ends. Maybe that's my fatal flaw, that it just ends. So thank you for watching. If you did watch, I know it's been a while since I've uploaded a video, and hopefully I'll be able to do some more now that I'm more settled in here. So yeah, if you want to keep on top of my content going forward, do click subscribe. And if you want to see more videos like this, where I pick out a specific technique that a writer's used in a book that I think they've done pretty well at, obviously let me know in the comments, see what kind of ideas you want me to explore, that kind of thing, and what you want to hear me talk about. It's going to be an exciting era, isn't it, of BookTube Live, but that's just the way the cookie crumbles. By the way, my fatal flaw is Tic Tacs, and I'm almost positive they're going to kill me. So if you don't see me again, it's because I choked to death on a Tic Tac. See you later.